Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Andrew Davis, and you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture. And yes, I am hard to kill. And before I introduce my guest, I do want to remind everybody that this episode is brought to you by PocketJackComics.com. And it's my good friend Preston, and he does books like Palace of the Golden Princess and White Lily and Guinevere and a bunch of other really, really interesting books. And Palace, in my opinion, is one of his best books because it is beautifully illustrated. There's a lot of fun stuff in there. I think you'll be happy on an art level. It's a fun little story. It's 5 issues, and there's some really cool variants surrounding it. And there's some other stuff in there that you may or may not like. But I'm not going to spoil it for anybody. But you can go to pocketjackcomics.com and go check it out there and get those books there. Or you could go find them on Kickstarter or potentially in your comic shop if Diamond is still operating, which God knows if they are. But enough about that, because I do have with me comic creator Jon Dexter. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a little while since the last time I was on, but I'm rolling now. We've got up to issue 5 of my newest Kickstarter, Dexter Detective.
Yeah. So obviously you got that going on Kickstarter, and we're gonna get into that because obviously once you get to issue 5, you got a meat of the story. But I kind of want to give you and allow you to quickly introduce who you are, because there's people who might remember you. There's people who are always coming into new shows and seeing people again for the first time, or not seeing them again for the first time, or meeting them for the first time. But yeah, who exactly are you? Quick introduction, because you've been doing other stuff beyond this book.
Yeah. So I started on Kickstarter in 2021 with the release of my Alpha Dogs, and this is my 12th Kickstarter. I write this series, Alpha Dogs, that was actually published by Source Point Press, released this year, so that was pretty exciting, bookstores and stuff. And then my series Dexter Detective, and finally Space Cruise. And so I write a whole plethora of genres to my plate. I enjoy about everything.
Yeah. So obviously you do a lot of stuff, but we're not going to be talking too much about Alpha Dogs, because I do want to talk about the Kickstarter, because obviously you have this, it's on issue 5. And again, we're going to go backwards to go forwards for 1 second here. But what is the basic premise of, Dime Store Detectives? Because some people, again, know the book. Some people are coming into a Kickstarter brand new, and a bunch of people get into things in new ways. And sometimes not everybody jumps on issue 1. So what's the basic premise before we kind of get into some of the nitty gritty? Because a lot of crazy stuff's happening in this book.
Yeah. So we open up with the detective, Donald Macketer. He is on, here's some of the cool cover art. So whenever the comic is in black and white is when we're in the past, in 1981, when the detective is 8 years old, raised by moonshiners embroiled in this turf war. Then whenever the comic is in color, like so here, it's when we're in the present, when the detective is on the hunt for a serial killer. Then at the heart of the story is this evil entity that the detective's father and uncle inadvertently released when the detective is 8 years old, out of a cave in the Appalachian Mountains. This evil entity has been trapped there for hundreds of years by the Cherokee, and it possesses the detective's uncle in 1981. And then we would flash forward and flash back throughout the series for 40 years, when the detective is on the hunt for a serial killer, and somehow this evil entity is returned in the present, and the detective has to figure out the connection between the serial killer and the return of this evil entity. So if you like supernatural stories, if you like, detective mysteries like True Detective, but some supernatural elements to your detective stories or crime mysteries, then you've really enjoyed this series.
So let's get into this a little bit, because obviously a lot's going on here. So obviously we have a cop who is kind of an old school, get it done type of cop, who kind of, you get the sense that he bends the rules in the pursuit of justice. I think is a good way how to describe him. And he's a dying breed in many ways, because, he's got some pressure from the department that you can't really do this anymore in this day of age. But then also he's on the hunt for a serial killer, and other crimes are in connection with this as well. And so what is that like to figure out his character? Because at this stage, I feel like, it's kind of an interesting, I guess, balance to say, cool, how do I write this character in an environment right now politically that doesn't exactly like cops like this and isn't the norm in departments
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, he's well, I wanted to have like the story as a kind of a love story to the 1940s detective noir, the old Humphrey Bogarts. And so my detective Mackinder, he goes against the top brass, and City Hall hates him because they're corrupt and they can't corrupt him. So he's kind of a lone wolf in the department that he won't play by their rules and suck up. So he's kind of the bane of City Hall. So I wanted to create that detective who was a maverick and you know does justice how we think is fair, and sticks up for the little guy. So I wanted one of those detectives that will take on the establishment no matter what kind of story, which I've always enjoyed.
Because it also goes further too, because obviously he comes from a corrupt family.
Yeah, yeah, and his family is legendary in the town. This story takes place in Athens, Georgia, up north, North Georgia, and there are four generations of moonshiners, and they go to war with the Dixie Mafia, this gang that tries to push the moonshining family out of business, but they're not going to go quietly into the night. And so when they go to war with this gang, the uncle ends up getting possessed by this evil entity, and all hell breaks loose, as you can imagine, as the story goes along. Once his family it goes to war with this gang, and the uncle is possessed by this malevolent entity, so kind of all hell breaks loose, and it becomes the stuff of legend in the community for all these years. So the family is infamous throughout the state.
So let's even go further into this too, because obviously, he's going up against Brass. He's trying to find the serial killer. The serial killer left the bodies and has strung up a bunch of bodies in, the burial ground that his father and his uncle buried people in. So clearly, this serial killer knows knows who this detective is and
Yeah,
knows the detective who's going after them and is taunting, and it's probably personal to some degree. I
yeah,
mean, or it's a game, with the person the only person who could play it. It's one or the other. And then, so what is that like too? Because now you have all this crazy stuff going on with this, and then you got the family history, and you got a bunch of other stuff, and it's kind of like this is what makes this book interesting in many ways.
yeah. Yeah, it's a very unique book. I would say you're not going to find another comic book like this on the shelves, or hopefully even on TV. You've got this detective mystery, this hard-boiled mystery in, for the love of the old school detective mysteries, but then you have this supernatural story, this thriller woven into it. So it's unlike anything you've read, and I can tell you that people have wrote in. I've had a lot of positive reviews that you can check out, but it's a fun mystery that you want the audience or the readers to kind of be strung along, but not to get ahead of you. So it comes together, and there's a lot of really fun payoffs. And in this issue 5, that's on Kickstarter right now, the last panel changes the trajectory of the whole series. It's going to be mind blowing. And this is we've been building up to this scene in the end of issue 5 to do a lot of payoffs and swing the mystery in this totally unexpected direction. And like I said, people love it. They love a good mystery. They love something supernatural, to stories. It brings it, this other element than just another detective story.
So let's actually talk about that too, because once you get, obviously if you do your first issue, it's the entry point into any story, much like in a first episode in a television show. And it could also take a little bit of time, even with issue 2, to kind of start developing the narrative of where you want to go, setting things up, setting up the table, setting up clues, just like anything else with media. And then you have to start figuring out when you're going to have your payoffs, because obviously, if you're being published by DC Comics and they're putting out an issue of Batman, the trajectory of having to have those payoffs changes because you have a big corporation behind you, and you're also doing something every single month. But when you're asking people for 15, $20 every 3, 4, 5 months, it's also very different because you have to give somebody a piece of something. You have to give them enough to bite into and digest, I guess, is the word here. And so what is this like? Because at some point, you're going to be putting this into a trade paperback. I don't know if it's 4 issues or 5 issues for you, but you need that payoff to hit in a trade paperback as well when you go that route. And so what is that whole thing like? Because at a certain point, you got to give the steak. You can't give somebody potatoes and green beans.
Yeah. I think what you got to do is fill enough of the thread of the mysteries that even though you're getting to a point where you can solve something, but before you solve it, you have to have this other mystery come about. So while this mystery solved, you've got this new one. So they're called mystery boxes. J.J. Abrams explains it better than I can. But you build all these mystery boxes. Unfortunately, I don't think he paid off very many of them when he did the Force Awakens. He had all those mysteries, and he talks about the mystery boxes. But I don't think he had a good. I don't
He
think
did a good job with Lost. He did a very good job with Lost.
Yeah, it's Lost. Yep, and the same thing with Lost. All these mystery boxes. So what I try to do when I write is always have this lingering mystery. But if you want to pay off some of this, but keep people interested in the story, but don't let them figure it out before you do, if they or they don't care anymore. So, and the great thing about Dempster Detective, whenever we're in the past, it's in black and white. Whenever we're in the present, it's in color, so that nobody gets lost in the story. It's very easy to follow. And the cool thing with going back in the past is, everybody has some tragic event in their childhood that, or something that really hurt them. And my main character, Talon McIntyre, he gets to face that as an adult. Only, of course, him, it's about faith. It's about believing in oneself. And hopefully, as the story goes, when he faces this evil entity, he can, conquer his past. So I think that just a visceral feeling for all of us to have something in our past that we wish we could confront again or change.
So I want to dive into this a little bit too, because you're going back to giving something in which there's also the idea that when you get to issue 5, you can pivot stories. I was speaking with Travis Gibb about a Granite State Punk, and he said in his last one that there's a moment in the last one that he did that it completely shifts the whole narrative of what's going on for the next like 4 or 5 stories that are going to occur out of this whole thing. And there's a point where you get to shift narratives, you get to evolve narratives, you get to reevaluate narratives, and you really get to, kind of say, cool, let's kind of flip this up a little bit and take a left turn and go this way now. Yeah. And so what is that like too? Because, there's nothing wrong with just continuing down the straight and narrow. But also there's points where it's good to switch things up and kind of make a turn here and there and, say, cool, let's go into uncharted territory a little bit.
Yeah, well, a story there's a certain beat of how you tell a story, no matter if it's a comic book series or a movie series. You're building in Act 1 to your point, and then there's other points that come in, but you should, at the halfway of the point of the story, come to here, your top. This is the halfway, and then there's some event that changes the whole trajectory, and then we go down this other path to build towards our climax. So, it's part of storytelling that is fundamental. So you have to have beats in the story, and it's a tried and true. You're not going to get around it, and nobody gets around unless you're Quentin Tarantino. And if you're not doing the building blocks, then you don't have a story.
Fair enough. Again, I find it interesting when people decide to go around and change narratives and reposition and I guess, chamber the round, for lack of a better word here, because it's a tricky thing to do in a story when all of a sudden you want to kind of flip it up and say, cool, we're now going to change everything. Like
Yeah.
everything, but also, you need consequences too in stories. At a certain point, you need consequences. Like
Mhm.
you need characters to die in war stories. I don't know if you're an anime fan, but like there's stuff that happens in Naruto. I think I could say Naruto, right? I think it's been out long enough that the third Hokage dies. If you didn't know, and I'm sorry, everybody, but it changes the whole position of Naruto because it's like, oh shoot, we have a figurehead dying in this village, and there's consequences for being a ninja. And it changes the story and it makes it real, and it says, okay, cool, this is no longer, this is like these kids are actually
Mhm.
soldiers. And I'm not saying it's that extreme, but it's like, so I don't know how you feel about that, but like that, because if your book there was no consequences in it, it would get boring.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You it would definitely get boring if there wasn't any consequences. There's all stories have a fundamental, building of conflict. That there should your story should always have conflict throughout the whole story, or people just get bored. So yeah, that's the main character has to want something, and that's what the story, pushes towards and
And
in the way.
let me ask you this about conflict. One
Yeah.
of my favorite books is a book called Wendell. Wendell is about just relationships between people and dating and life, right? So the
Hmm.
conflict isn't necessarily bad. It's just that person A wants to be with person B, right? And then they're throwing themselves out dating and meeting other people and all sorts of stuff like that. The conflict is not necessarily adversarial as much as it's situational, but it's I want to be in a relationship is the conflict.
Hmm.
So, but there's consequences on how you act and if the date works out, if it doesn't work out, and then even when you're
Hmm.
in the relationship. And so the conflict doesn't necessarily have to be that serial killers killing bodies and I'm a cop and City Hall's being down my neck and what is City Hall hiding and how is City Hall involved and is this an evil entity controlling the serial killer? Like,
Yeah.
like, it doesn't have to be that, but it can be.
You're right. You're right. That's true. It doesn't have to be all life stakes all the time.
But I digress. But I do want to talk about the other thing that's interesting about your book too is that it's in black and white and color at the same time.
Yeah.
And so on the surface, I'm going to say this is that I think it's a cheap trick to do it, but I also think it's a really good trick to do too because it makes it crystal clear obvious. The past is that, and it doesn't require your reader to think. So that's why
Mhm.
I say it's a cheap trick to do because
Yeah.
it clearly separates the past and the present, and it doesn't require the reader to have to figure that out. But it's also not a bad trick either. But like,
Hmm.
what even prompted that? Because that's a fascinating idea in
Yeah.
many.
Yeah, I try to live by the KISS rule, keep it simple, stupid. So when I write, I do want to make sure that there's no confusion, because if there is, then you've lost the reader. Then you might as well just pack up and go home. And it's so easy, it's so easy to get confused in flashbacks. Flashback. um, and someone got confused, and I don't want to have to explain it every time I go into a flashback. Have to have some kind of, have to show a movie theater with what's playing in 1981, or have to try to get people to distinguish our structures to figure out what timeline we are in. And I also felt, because it's kind of a noir and it's a kind of a flashback dime store novel time period, that black and white would be cool to go with that time periods. But mostly it was so nobody got confused, because once they do that, you've lost them and no one cares, because it's a mystery story too. So
Did you also feel that just you're making it crystal clear and that you don't, because you kind of said it, but I want to even go further, is that sometimes you want to tell your reader exactly what you're doing because it's not the heart of the story. Like if you're telling somebody and the main character is psychotic and is schizophrenia, then you might want to make it more vague. What is a flashback? What isn't, right? Because that's the point of the story, is that you don't know what's real, right? Have you read Shutter Island by any chance?
No, I've never read it. The movie was great.
Yeah, the movie works too, right? We don't know by definition what is real and what isn't in Shutter Island. If we're going to really go into Shutter Island, you can make an argument on both sides. Is this whole thing real, or is it a figment of his imagination and what's going on? And you can make an argument on both sides, right? But that's the point of Shutter Island, is that's what you want to do in Shutter Island. But with this, I don't think that's your point, because you want to tell me, hey, look, this is a flashback to 40 years ago, because that's part of the story, but we're not in dispute that that's part of the story. Like, this isn't a memory. This is what happened, kind of, right?
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, that's exactly how I had it set up for it. Leave no confusion or anything.
And then the other thing that I think is interesting, and I don't know how you view it, is that obviously, see, this is what's fascinating, is that black and white is cheaper and faster than color. By definition, on a 101 level. So with, I don't know how much percentage of your book is in black and white versus color, but it's, those pages are cheaper and they're faster by definition. I mean, tabling the money, right? It's black and white is just faster than color. But what is that like too? Because it gets interesting when you start mixing genres and blending together. It's like, how do you explain to your artist, hey, you're doing the black and white pages, then you're doing the color pages? Like, is your black and white good enough for this? I don't know. Like Walking Dead's a good example, right? The black and white in Walking Dead is great.
Yeah.
But I've seen bad black and white.
So am I. Actually, Dexter Detective is going to be turned into a graphic novel after issue 5. So, and it's going to be published. It's picked up a publisher. So they wanted to do like a gray tone to the black and white, because mine are still going to be black and white, but they're going to be more, they have a tone to them now when it gets released to the graphic novel. So it'll be really fun to release it now with that with a tone to it now, to black and white. So it looks a little better. So it's still distinguishable, but it's going to be in a, the sepia tone or a gray tone.
Or like a gray whitewash type tone.
Something like that. Yeah, we're still discussing it, but the cool thing is it will be a published. Dexter Detective will be published. Alpha Dogs was published, like I said, earlier this year, so it's going to be cool to have 2 published books, and the fact that they got a publisher that kind of speaks to these are entertaining comic books that I think people really will enjoy.
So to even talk about that too, because obviously not anybody can go on Kickstarter, and plenty of people do. They basically compile their stuff into a graphic novel. So I don't even know what a graphic novel is technically anymore, because I know what a trade paperback is, a graphic novel. We all call it the same thing. To me, it's just a bounded collection that's not comic books. A trade paperback. Somebody actually did explain to me, but I don't remember what it is, right? I know what an original graphic novel is, right? So it's the first time it's being published as a graphic novel. That's an original graphic novel. But I don't know what a trade paperback is. I don't know what a graphic novel is. But I think somebody explained that a graphic novel is also edited, and it's not like the original. And a trade paperback might just be almost like an exact replica. So if you have letters,
I didn't know. I didn't know the difference. I thought it meant the same thing.
That's what I thought too, right? Because supposedly it's kind of like if you have a letter column in the back of your book, it would be in the back of the trade paperback. Like, and that's what's so interesting. But then I've also heard people say, yeah, a graphic novel and a trade paperback are the same fucking thing. So just shut up. Like, I've heard it both ways, but like, I always thought trade for the
Tomato,
graphic.
tomato.
I always thought it was the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I always thought that it was a replica, an exact replica. But that tabling all that, because this is semantics now. But what is that like? Because obviously, if you're getting picked up by a publisher to publish this into a graphic novel, you're not. Is it going to be kickstarted, or is it going to be straight to a publisher? Because that's also a different entity completely too. Is when a publisher says, "I'm willing to put my money on the line," versus we're
Yeah.
going to start it first, and then I'm going to have distribution for you. Because those are two different things completely as well.
Yeah. Well, my publisher, it's creator owned, so I still pay for the graphic novels. They distribute them. So, but the fact that it is still creator owned, I get to put on Kickstarter because of my money. So that's great, beneficial, because you make so much more on a Kickstarter than you do on sales through like Amazon or Barnes and Noble. You don't make anywhere near as much for the sales. Sell them on Kickstarter. So thankfully, I'll be able to put them on Kickstarter, and then after that, they'll be in bookstores and. Basically who I call, it's cool to get a publisher, but you're still doing the same amount of work trying to get your name out there. It never gets easy.
It's tricky, right? But book sales are tricky, right? Because you still have to sell your book. Mm-hmm. Even if you're writing for DC Comics, you still need to sell your book.
Yeah.
In which that it's great to have somebody backing you. It's great to have a media team behind you to some degree, having support, but also a lot of publishers, don't necessarily have, they might have a little bit of help. They might be pushing it out for you. They might be able to print it in a certain way that's beneficial to you. But at the same time, you still got to get eyes on your project.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, yeah, it's still a lot of work. It never ends. I'm waiting for the day I can just sit back and drink my margaritas. All the money comes in. I don't know that it's been a few 20 years now. so
let me ask you this, because I'm a strong believer where the real money on this show isn't from the show, right? I don't make much money at all from this. What I have is I have a name, a brand, and to some degree I have attention and clout. So when I want to push something, I have an audience to push it towards. I have 850 subscribers growing every single year, and I can push whatever I want to push onto them, right? And then all of a sudden, whoever else is reaching it on Facebook, on Twitch, wherever else I push it towards, obviously I can push whatever message I want to push out.
Yeah.
And so I think this is where the real money is. It's not in comics. It's partially, and you're creating a product, but it's saying I am the brand. So it's Jon Dexter is the brand, and whatever you attach your name to is what it is. And I think Jonathan Hendricks was explaining this, where he writes a book for Marvel, he writes a book for Image, he writes his own stuff. He was doing some stuff for Scout. He's the brand, and then his followers who like his writing come and follow him. So if all of a sudden Source Point Press calls you and says, "Hey, we want you to write a book," or Image, or I can't think of Bad Bug Media, like Teener's company, says we want you to write a book. Now your followers hopefully will follow you, because that's where I think the real money is. And all of this is that you are selling you, not necessarily a book. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. That sounds right. I tend to agree with that.
Because that's how you make a lot of money, because now all of a sudden you get because people are following you and then they're buying your product. Exactly. They're not buying wherever you go. Because I mean, and that's the thing with this whole show, is that somebody's buying access to the YouTube stuff. They're not necessarily buying access to a interview. It's to the whole library. And that's why people subscribe, because they're like, okay, what is the next interview that's coming? What's the next piece of content that's coming? And then all of a sudden, when you have like 1,000, 1,500 of them, you're like, okay, I get it. There's a lot of content here.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I hope to get enough readership like that, because that's a good bunch of followers there.
Yeah, no, it's growing every year. Subscribers grow every year,
That's good.
and it's wonderful. But I find this fascinating because again, once you go to a publisher, it's the clout, right? Because I don't know how you feel about this,
Oh
but
yeah.
did you feel that when Alpha Dogs was picked up, that all of a sudden you're at a convention, you have three, four, five issues of that series, you have a trade paperback, it changes the perception. Because I was
Yeah.
speaking with Tom Hutchinson about this. Great, you got one or two issues that changes the perception because, and I'll ask it this way too: is that have you ever seen somebody and they have their first book and you don't know if they're going to make it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a lot of people that I've seen. I'm sure. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to make it with my first book. I had no idea. It was.
I mean,
I
I'm talking about as a consumer, not even as a creator. Is that I am always hesitant to back somebody's first book at a convention and pick up. And yeah, it's $15, so it's not like it's going to make or break me. But I'm like, is
yeah.
there going to be an issue two? But if you got
Yeah.
two, three issues out there, changes it a little bit for me as
Yeah.
a consumer. It's like, okay, cool. I'll drop $40 for three issues on this, or I'll drop $30 for three issues. Now we have a chunk of a story. There's a good chance you're going to have an issue four at some point. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? But then when you say I got a trade paperback, that also tells me something. Okay, this person is now serious
Yeah.
because I don't
Absolutely.
want to drop $30 on your book or
Hmm.
20 on your book, and then you're flash in the pan and you realize it's fucking hard, and I don't want to do this anymore because it is hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I would really would love to know. There's got to be a stat Kickstarter has that says, how many people have done an issue two of a comic book that they put on Kickstarter, that would be, or an issue three, how many there have been, because I'd be quite curious, you know,
The
how many are
the
have been made
stat,
past
I don't know.
issue.
I don't know if this is similar, but the stat in podcasting is once you get past episode 6, you are more likely to get to episode 50.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yes, do not make it past episode 6.
Yeah. But I wonder what the percentage is how many don't make it past issue one on Kickstarter. That would be I bet you it's 50%.
I would love that stat. The problem is that the stat, I don't even know where we would go to get the stat, right? Because it's fascinating in which that every sector has a cutoff period, right? And the reason why
Yeah.
the reason why I use podcasting is I just know podcasting better than anything else because that's more of the sector I play in. But it's the idea that if you get past episode 6 in podcasting, you are more likely to make it to episode 50
Mhm.
because most podcasts die before episode 6, and it makes sense because
Yeah.
no traction, nobody knows who you are. You just put in 12 to 30 hours worth of work, and you're like,
Mhm.
four people saw it, and two of those people were my mom. Like
Yeah.
she watched it twice because I asked her to, right? That's usually how this
Yeah.
everybody laughs, but and then you bother your friends, and great, you got like 15 views on it, and you're like, I just spent 40 hours working on this thing, and 15 people
Yeah.
have seen it. I don't want to do this for 50 episodes. This sucks. And it's
Yeah.
the same thing
It's tough.
with
Yeah.
comics, I would imagine. I mean, you tell me if I'm close to this. What is the average comic cost? Like 4,500 to do, give or take?
How many is the average what?
What is the average cost of a comic to produce? Like 4,500?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Every bit of that. Yeah.
Relatively on average, $4,500 should get you a what
Yeah.
two,
Yeah.
three covers, maybe.
I would say
And
so. Yeah. Right in that area. Yeah.
so like, and that's not counting if you're the writer, your time. That's not if you're drawing the book. It's going to be a little bit cheaper, but
Hmm.
it still might be around that number technically. You still got to print it. You still got to kickstart it. I mean, and I'm not even talking about printing the book. Just talking about getting the art.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
raise your goal is 2,500 on Kickstarter, you just dropped 45, you made three, you're $1,500 down in the hole, and you got to use your three to print it and get it to your backers and still ship it to them. And even if they paid for shipping, it sucks.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
expensive.
It's definitely tough. it's not made for everybody. That's why so many fail at it. But you have to take your lumps sometimes to have, if you have a goal in sight, which you believe that you're good enough at what you're doing, that some it's going to catch on, and it takes a while to catch on. Nobody's an overnight success, it takes time. So if you're willing to go through the grind and the hard work to make it, then it was all worth it. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work out, and it was a waste of time. So,
But let me ask this, because also what I think people don't understand, and feel free to disagree with me, is you're creating IP.
yeah,
So IP creation is expensive. IP creation is complicated, and the real value in this story and Alpha Dogs and a bunch of other stuff that you've created is not necessarily the comic, but it's the IP behind it. Because you own an IP, you own a copyright for it, you own a lot of probably the art on it because it's a work for hire, if I'm not mistaken, right?
mhm. Yeah,
So you own IP. So IP is expensive to produce, it's expensive to create, it's complicated to create, and you could license out the IP, you could sell the IP, you can have a TV show at some point if somebody approaches you, but you created IP. Like, I'm not creating IP here. I'm creating a interview, but it's not intellectual. I mean, it's technically intellectual property, but it's not the same. If
hmm
that makes any sense,
yeah,
right? Like, that's what I think also people don't understand is that you might lose money in the short term, but if you spend 4,500 or $6,000 to produce IP, I mean, you just created intellectual property for $6,000 that you now can sell, license out, make a movie, sell it to Netflix, have Netflix license it and make a TV show, whatever you want to do with it. Well, you now have a piece of intellectual property, which is worth
yeah,
money.
yeah, absolutely. It's hopefully it paves off. We'll see. But it's the cool thing is the comics are getting more and more popular. So yeah, hopefully the IP ends up being worth a few bucks to sell to Netflix. We'll see. Everybody always keeps
Or
telling me
even to
that.
a publisher, right? I mean, you have a
Yeah,
publisher interested in helping you with distribution with a graphic novel. I mean,
yeah,
that's that's IP. That's an IP relationship, right?
yeah,
So it's not
yeah.
like you're coming out of nowhere here with all this. I mean,
Mhm.
there's stuff involved, obviously, with this, and there's big
Yeah,
money involved. But I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah, potentially. We'll see what happens. It just the first published one came out here in February, so about 4 months ago now. So it's doing well. We're almost sold out actually. Then we're going to go back to printing, but I'm going to print up Alpha Dogs 1 through 5 as a special edition. But this other one was 1 through 4. But I didn't know I was going to get a publisher, so I didn't make it as high of quality as that I wanted to, that I will now when it gets re-released with latex cover, and it looks really sharp, brand new cover, looks really cool.
that's fascinating. That's fascinating. And then even to go further into this, I mean, obviously, you got a lot of rewards with this one, and then
Yeah,
you got 3 covers. And one of the things that I think is interesting, and obviously this is one of the covers right here.
yeah, that's awesome. That's cover A,
It's cover
cover
B, right?
B, yeah, and
And
yeah,
I can't speak today, guys. I'm a little sick. This is cover
this is
C.
yeah, it's a retro cover.
And so, they're relatively priced fairly.
Yeah, they
Correct
are.
me. What is like just the basic non-signed version? What is that, like 12, $15, give or take?
Yeah, yeah, it's down to 14, then 14, 16, 17, where a lot of people's variants they are asking 25 bucks for, or at least 20. Mine's just $2 over the regular price. So everything I've tried to do as cheap as I can. Printing prices have went through the roof. There's some cool tiers I have where there's a special edition where you get a Kickstarter exclusive sticker. I sign the comic, and your name is on the thank you page of the back of the book. That's only for a couple extra bucks. So a lot of cool rewards. You can get a piece. I have the
let's talk about pricing, because I don't know how you feel about Kickstarter, but some of this shit gets wildly expensive really fast. And I mean, it just goes where I've seen people ask like $90 for a variant.
Oh my, yeah, I know, it's crazy what they pay for, and they're not even a big name yet. So
I've seen it all. I've seen people sell books for $5, right? And $5 shipping. I've seen the whole shebang, right?
Yeah.
And that's my whole thing. And I've seen cover A's for $20. I've seen, things. I've seen like a cover A for 15. I've seen a cover A for 12, right? I've also seen people charge $12 for a cover and the book never gets delivered. So what is this like? Because there's got to be a sweet spot here, and even figuring out the price point, what to sell for, how to get backers in there, how to make some money on it, and how to really figure out this whole thing, because this is relatively complicated. Because again, I'm in business and I sell $1,200 cards and I sell $7 cards.
Yeah.
And I like selling both, because the people who want a $7 card, they want to buy a $7 card because it's cheaper to buy from me than from the manufacturer. At the exact same time, I'm making a little bit of money, but they don't want that $1,200 card, or they want it. They want it. Let me rephrase. They can't afford it at the moment, and they're okay, and they understand that they can't afford a $1,200 card. And I'll be honest, I can't afford a $1,200 card either most times of the year. The fact that I get them is that I buy them when they come out and they're not $1,200, but that's what they trade for. But at the same time, I get it completely, because $1,200 for anything is a lot of money.
Yeah, especially for a card, that's crazy. Anybody would pay that much money for a card?
I'll explain. It's this one right here. I sold this one for a G.
Really, I didn't even think women's basketball was that popular. They get a $1,200 card.
It's a Diana Taurasi auto card, and it sold within 28 minutes. And I cried when I sold it, because I knew I'm never going to see that card again in my life.
Well, so what's so special about it?
It's her 101 Viper. So it's a 101 card.
Oh, there's only one of those made. That's the only. Wow, that's the only one made. They're the one in the world.
Yep.
So wow. Congratulations. That's just you randomly buy packs of cards and look through them.
No, that dropped, and I was just there first.
Oh, okay.
It was a drop, and I just was there first.
Dang, that's wicked.
I also have this one too, but this one is not doing as well, because maybe if the Cleveland Cavaliers actually did their job, this card would do better.
Yeah.
They got eliminated by the Pacers. It's pretty bad.
Yeah. They were the higher seed. The Cavs were, right?
They were the number 1 seed.
That's what I thought.
They got smoked.
That
was not the biggest upset in basketball. I can tell you that. The Knicks taking games 1 and 2 from the Celtics. That was a much bigger upset.
Yeah. Jeez. That is crazy. Huh. Well, I appreciate having me on. I think what time is it? We got a little more time, right?
Yeah, we have as much time as you need.
Oh, okay. Well, I've got to get off about 8:00.
Well, on that note, then I will give you a chance then to promote yourself, because obviously there's a lot of stuff going on. And I just want to touch upon the price thing, because I think it's really interesting when people try to be reasonable on Kickstarter, because I'm a strong believer that I want to sell to everybody, and I want to tier for everybody. It's the reason why I sell $7 cards and $1,000 cards, because those two clients are sometimes the same, but also sometimes they are different, right? Where somebody just wants, say, $12 book or a $14 book, and they can afford a $14 book, but they don't want to spend $500 on an original piece of art.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do want to give you a chance to promote yourself, because obviously you got this coming out and it's still going on, and I'm going to be sharing this out and hopefully getting you some backers. But so where can people find the campaign, and then B, where can people find you? Check out your other work, check out everything else you're doing, and all that stuff, because you just don't do this book either. And obviously people should follow writers and artists and a bunch of other people beyond when they're just doing Kickstarters.
Yeah. So Dexter Detective issues 1 through 5 is on Kickstarter right now until June 6th. It's been funded. Now we're marching towards the first stretch goal. So if you go to Kickstarter, type in Dexter Detective, or you can type in my name, Jon Dexter, JONDXTR. You can go find some of my work. I'm on Instagram at alpha_dogs_comic. I'm on X at Real Alpha Dogs. I'm on Facebook at Jon Dexter Comics. So come join and check out some of the stuff. At least watch the trailer on the Kickstarter. It's really awesome.
Fair enough. And then I'm going to keep saying it because I can't speak today, apparently. So I'm going to keep saying it, that you need to support people when they're on Kickstarter, pushing out comics. And then even when they're not doing that, obviously following people on social media means a lot. Following people on Facebook, checking out stuff that they're doing on YouTube, checking out if they got a website or they're being published, picking up books if they're going to conventions and they're going to be there buying stuff at conventions. Very, very, very important, very helpful. And just sharing stuff out is always helpful to people, because it does go a long way. It goes a really long way to support people, and support is not just backing a Kickstarter. It's also following somebody on X or their Facebook page or subscribing on YouTube. So everybody should be doing that. It's really important to do that. And then as far as I'm concerned, since it's my show, I like to promote myself, and I am Pop Anime Comics on Twitter/X. It's Twitter and X to me, guys. It's Twitter and X to me. I am on the gram, and some people call it the Instagram, but I call it the gram still, at Pop Anime Comics. I'm on Facebook under Pop Anime Comics. I have a YouTube channel, Pop Anime Comics. Please subscribe. It's free, and you will not miss any of my content. And I release a lot of content a year, and a lot of interesting content a year at that. And I have a lot of fun polls every day and a lot of fun images. So there's something for everybody on my YouTube channel. I am on TikTok at Pop Anime Comics, so please check me out there. And I run a little eBay store. So a little eBay store. So look for comps and collectibles. Come shop with us on eBay at Pop Anime Comics Collectibles. And I sell stuff like this in my store. I sell stuff like this in my store. I sell stuff like this in my store. This is a better image of that. I sell stuff like this in my store all the time. Stuff like this in my store. And yes, as I stated before, carry really expensive basketball cards. And so if you're looking for like those 101s that are like $1,200 to $1,500 a piece, I got you covered. And I got a bunch of other stuff coming as well in the next few days. And potentially tomorrow at 3:10, I might have some Jalen Brunsons in my store. So be on the lookout for that, everybody. Be on the lookout for that, because I got a lot of that cool stuff up there. But I also have $7 cards for those who want to buy those as well. And I've been saying it forever that if you come to my store and you're looking for something and it's not there, ask me. Legitimately, products have been put up on my eBay store because clients wanted to buy them. And then if I do not have it, either the card doesn't exist or I don't have it, but I know somebody who does. And I'll point you in the right direction, because I've done that for plenty of clients and they're always happy. So that's everything that I got going on. And on that note, I will give you the final word.
Yeah, just thanks for having me on, Andrew. I appreciate it. I like coming on, talking shop with you. But yeah, like I said, encourage anybody to go with the Kickstarter. If you don't do Kickstarter, I have my Alpha Dogs Volume 1 on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, any website you go to that sells books, you can get my Alpha Dogs Volume 1 by Jon Dexter.
And I don't think I could have said that any better myself, everybody. And that is a wrap.